Going on over here. I like it. We've been talking about the athlete report, and we've spoken in the past about putting together an athlete report. We've talked about leadership and representation. We want to make this really tangible, and we want to put this in your hands so that this is something that that you guys commit to doing as an athlete rep, or if you're not the athlete's rep, that you commit to sharing with your athlete rep, or that you commit to writing and presenting with your athlete rep. The point being that we have an athlete report written from every NSO, from every sport for next year at Forum. If you have any concerns about that, let's talk about it. What resource do you need? Is this enough information? Is this enough of a template? One of the things we'd like to follow up with is creating a template survey that you can use. Making sure that you have the resources available. This will be one of the activities that the staff will be focused on this year, and there will be follow-up with you directly. Your AGM's in 3 months. Do you need any support? Do you understand, what the athlete report looks like? Does everyone buy into that? As an organization and as an athlete body, is this something that you guys see as valuable and as important? I'm seeing lots of head nods. Dasha? Right.
I started the Athlete Council of Taekwondo. We didn't have one before that. So maybe a little template of how that can be
right.
Started, just something simple, but I think this is really great.
So this raises a great point, and not every sport is at the same place with regards to the representation that's there. We hear in your position on the board is something that I've heard stated many times this weekend so far. In diving, we don't have an athlete rep on the board. So the requirement by Sport Canada is either an athlete on the board or an athlete on the technical committee. So in lots of cases, you may or may not have an athlete on the board. In diving, the representation is very, very effective, even though we don't have an athlete on the board. And it's because of this report that's submitted. So the point being that whatever position or stage of development your NSO is at, it is a requirement that there is athlete representation, and this report is something that can and should be submitted to your board of directors. That's probably the way to do it. Speak with if it isn't something that has been done before, to speak with probably your president of your board is a good place to go and say, this is something that we will be submitting and that we feel should be published with the AGM documents. What I'd like to do is just walk through what what we have here is, an AthletesCAN, Athletes Council report guidelines, what that looks like. This is something that diving has been using since 2004, 2005. I've included an example here. We've included an example of the committee report that was written in 2008 for diving. This template is also something that Tom Hall has used or has been using with canoe kayak, and so I'll get Tom to share some comments on that after we go through the guidelines and the big pieces that are outlined here. This is the current template. It doesn't mean it is the only answer. So we're certainly open to suggestions, but we'd like to share that so that there's some consistency of athlete reports across all sports. Really the perspective also, I'd like to take a very positive and naive approach in this, thinking that everyone in every sport is there, with a very positive goal of a certain altruistic involvement in their sport, that they want to see the sport move forward, that they want to see objectives met, for the betterment of the athletes and the coaches and administrators, everyone involved. I think taking that very positive approach and really presenting and framing this as recommendations on how to improve the sport, as opposed to, here's all the things that are wrong, fix them. That squeaky wheel approach just is really easy to ignore. For board members, taking a responsible leadership message is something that's very different. So again, establishing the right tone. A tone of appreciation is very important. In terms of the content, starting with the report and looking at the diving, if you just follow along with the diving report here. We open it up with, here's an overview of the year. So it's a past Olympic year. The quadrennial had great successes. This report is an overview of key developments. It's just an opener. Then looking at a review of previous year recommendations. So let's see. The previous year we had discussed specifically training camps, outfitting, therapists, and synchronized team selections. So what was done? Were those recommendations followed, yes or no? And this is an accountability piece. Said, hey, these are the things that we asked and recommended last year. Did you do anything with it? If they did, thanks. It made a difference. We had a physiotherapist, and having those 2 therapists available at the games and in lead up to the games had a huge positive impact. Thanks for listening to us. If you don't say thanks, then it's like, next time that recommendation just might not get followed up on as well. Specifically, also addressing key competitions. So in 2008, the Olympic Games and training camp. Where they're, getting feedback from the specific athletes. It's not just your feedback. It's not just the person that's writing it. It's getting the feedback from the athletes and laying out, here's the areas that we're looking for feedback. So, hey, Joey, how was your season? What do you think of the year? Yeah, it was good. Had some best performances, everything, it's fine. But asking very specific questions in that feedback is very different. All of a sudden, there's a framework. What did you think of the training camps? What did you think of the services that were provided? What do you think of the selection process? Oh, yeah, I can answer very specifically to that. Then you have a body of work that you can work with. Sometimes you might be presenting something that, maybe didn't affect you at all, that you don't have any insight on, but you're carrying the athlete voice. You're trying to represent your whole team and not just your own perspective. AthletesCAN forum. This is an important piece. This is something that becomes visible. It's, showing your NSOs that this is something that you valued. It's showing communicating to your athletes, here's something that, you should be aware of. I've heard several people here that are here for the first time say, I didn't know there was an AthletesCAN forum or any of this existed. Well, if it's in your athlete report and that gets mailed out to every athlete, the only reason they couldn't know about it is because they haven't opened their email and read that report. Feedback on, I have here, feedback. Oh, this is Mandy Moran wrote this section. So we had Mandy Moran, who's a teammate and had attended forum for her first time, gave some personal anecdote. So it's got a bit of personal feel to it. Training camps, I think it's pretty evident, what we've done here. The new recommendations this year, it could be something really simple. We've got food at Grand Prix events. A major area of concern for several athletes is the food available at Grand Prix events. You go to Spain and all of a sudden, or you go to China and you're eating rice and dumplings every day, but you don't train on rice and dumplings, and all of a sudden you're getting completely different nutrition. I mean, these are things that might seem silly, but all of a sudden the board of directors that's helping make decisions on this say, oh, I didn't realize that that's something that's affecting performance. And the litany of things that that frontline feedback might provide. Really, really important. And then the following year, 2009, we would have followed up on the previous year's recommendations. So, there's really not much more for me to say about that. I think more. Does anyone have any questions about what that looks like, Jen?
So we have an AGM and a semi-annual AGM, so we have to do kind of 2 a year. Does the
I think you should report on what's most relevant. I don't think you should omit things from a report because it's something that's already passed. So I would suggest, I think it's okay to repeat things more than once. I think, say it once, say it twice, say it 3 times, and it gets the message across. So I'd recommend to overdo it instead of underdo it.
On that note, do other people submit reports? Do other committees, subcommittees submit reports at both AGMs?
Yeah.
Because if there's reports being submitted at both, you should submit one as well. And if there's only, if it's only once a year that everyone submits their reports, the high performance committee report or whatever it is, you submit yours when everyone else does.
Well, I know for sure we do submit 2, but
Okay.
I've never had necessarily a template. I just have
Yeah.
me and Jared kind of switch off. So, yeah, so I'm just sort of trying to wrap my brain around what it would, if there's like a particular style guide or guidelines as to what needs to be included during that template.
And I'd suggest you just use the same template, for 2 years, and you can say, during this year, in the last 12 months or last 6 months, but I say over communicate instead of under communicate.
Yeah, and if I could just speak to that. So in that case with the AGM, you have everybody there, right? And so at the meeting that you guys will have in October, it's not normally the entire AGM that's attending there. So for the AGM, you have a full overview of what's happened in that whole year, and then you might have a report on what's happened in the world and so forth in your meeting in October.
Tom, do you want to share how you submitting this report came about and your experience in putting that together?
I owe everything to Eric. No, it's true actually. I'm gonna sit. I'm tired. Fireside chats with Tom and Eric. For my first form was in 2009, and I was an athlete rep, and that's where even this idea of submitting this came about. And so I used Eric's template. I got it from him. I don't even know if you handed it out at Forum that year, or I don't think so. So I asked him for it after and did it. I've had a few interesting things with it. I don't use the exact same template now, and it does change year to year, but some of the things I've learned about using it are that you have to be very careful with how you word it. I mean, I'm fairly blunt and positive and negative, but just, I've been on the board now. It's not a board specifically. I'm not on the full board of directors. I report to the board of directors. I'm on the sprint board of directors. CKC is divided up into a whole bunch of things. It's very confusing, but for sprint, canoe, kayak, I'm on that board of directors. And I know these people, and I've known them very well, and I submitted the report at last year's AGM, and everyone was mad at me. It's like, and I honestly, I had tried so hard to make it as positive as possible because, frankly, we did well at the Olympics, but underlying that, there were a lot of fundamental issues. But I worked really hard to be positive and focus on the positive, but not ignore the negatives. So I said something like, what amounted to 2/3 of our selection process was perfect. Period. And everyone took that to be this huge negative statement. And I'm like, wait a minute, actually the majority of it was positive. You just really did mess something up, and we all acknowledge that. It was bad. So people, again, I said it earlier, are very defensive and take things very personally. So I still work through this, and now I'm at a point where I don't really care, and I'm getting more blunt. But I do think it's really critical to watch your wording and watch how you frame things and be constructive. I mean, I wasn't as constructive as I could have been sometimes, and I've learned over the years to be more constructive and so make it a more positive document. I also share that with the athletes, and I do keep a record. Like it got to a point where I was being accused of inciting ill will towards the organization. Someone had flat out accused me across our board table, and so I was like, F you. I just sent them all my emails that I'd been sending the athletes, which are all super positive, and don't say anything. The closest thing to incitement was, if you have a problem, contact Sports Solution. that was everything else was like, here are your rights, and it wasn't. And so with that other document that's published at the AGM, people are odd, and depending on your sport, people might take it the wrong way. So whatever you write down, be prepared to back it up. Make sure that if there's anything that's going to be a hot button and piss people off, that you can back it up very.